So today we're going to talk about Friday the 13th Part 7. Friday the 13th Part 7 takes place about 10 years after the events of Friday the 13th Part 6 and the final battle between Jason Voorhees and Tommy Jarvis. This is the third movie in the series that I have reviewed. I've also reviewed Part 4 and Part 2, which are two of the beloved entries in this series. Part 7 is a little bit more of a mixed reception installment in this series, but there's still plenty to talk about because what this movie lacks in story and characters, it makes up for with John Carl Buechler's vision of Jason Voorhees and Kane Hodder's portrayal of Jason in his first outing as the character. We're going to be talking about this Part 7 Jason bust by Night Owl Productions and this Part 7 hockey mask customized by my friend over at Rick's Store. So let's get to it. The year is 1987, and the slasher subgenre that took the horror world by storm in the late 1970s and the early 1980s is starting to fall out of favor with horror movie fans, due largely to an issue of just oversaturation. The previous installment in the series, Jason Lives, is by far a fan favorite and one of the most beloved movies in the series, and yet it was the poorest performing movie in the series at the box office up to that point. With a new sequel being released almost every single year in the 1980s, it wasn't hard to figure out why fans were losing interest in the series. It was simply too much too fast to keep casual fans to keep showing up at the movie theater. They needed a new angle to generate interest in the franchise. This is where the earliest talks of the Freddy vs. Jason crossover began, all the way back in 1987, 16 years before the film was actually released. The Nightmare on Elm Street series, unlike most of the other slasher franchises at the time, was on top of the world, generating higher and higher box office results with every new installment. Because of this, New Line Cinema, which owned A Nightmare on Elm Street, was a little less eager to do the crossover than Paramount was, who owned Friday the 13th. We'll never know exactly what happened behind closed doors between the two companies, but for whatever reason, a deal was never struck. I often wonder what Freddy vs. Jason would have been like had we gotten it back in the late 1980s. I think it would have been infinitely better than what we ultimately got in 2003. With Freddy vs. Jason off the table, Paramount needed a new angle to bring people back into the theater. And that angle would be Jason versus Carrie. However, it would not be Carrie White herself. It would be a teenage girl named Tina Shepard, a girl with similar telekinetic powers of moving objects with her mind, to avoid any similar type of issues they already had with Elm Street and New Line Cinema. The movie itself, I feel, is pretty typical of slashers coming out at that time. Predictable story, subpar acting, cookie cutter characters just there to be murdered. I don't really love the Tina portrayal by Lar Park Lincoln at any point in this movie, but I do enjoy the battle at the end of the movie between her and Jason, a battle in which she has the upper hand almost the entire time. The kills in this movie were also heavily censored by the MPAA. If you thought the kills in Part 2 were censored, they were being generous in comparison to this movie. The MPAA was pretty much a Nazi organization whose mission in life was to suck as much fun and enjoyment out of a movie as humanly possible. Picture a small army of Mark Zuckerbergs and you'd have the MPAA. Again, if you have not seen the unedited versions of these kills, you can find them online. You absolutely have to check them out. On the flip side, even with MPAA meddling, one of the most iconic kills in the entire franchise, the sleeping bag kill, still made it into this movie. Now let's talk about the design of Jason in this movie by special effects artist and director John Carl Buechler. It is purely and simply the coolest looking Jason in the entire franchise. Buechler's vision was an absolutely battered version of Jason Voorhees, displaying all of the damage sustained in the previous 6 installments. Interestingly enough, though, when it came to the hockey mask, Buechler seemed to forget about the bullet wound sustained from Sheriff Garris, and the propeller damage seemed to switch sides. In any event, the most badass looking Jason in the entire series. Part 7 marked the first of 5 portrayals of Jason Voorhees by Kane Hodder. Hodder's New Blood portrayal is easily his best and most memorable. Hodder's portrayals brought a level of consistency, anger, and intensity never seen before in the series up to this point. There is a level of rage in the Kane Hodder portrayal of Jason that is unmatched by any other actor to portray the character. I do my best when I do these videos to not watch any other reviews that people have done, because I don't want to just regurgitate a bunch of shit that somebody else has said. I want to give you my honest and genuine thoughts. So I didn't watch any videos in the lead up to this, but I've watched enough over the years that there is something I have to address. This population of the fan base that says, "Duh, I don't get it. All he does is heavy breathing." In this movie alone, Kane had a roof collapse on top of him, had a light fixture smashed into his face, and fell through a staircase, nearly smashing his head open, missing it by a couple of inches, in a stunt he wasn't even required to do. He then set a record at the time for the longest full body sustained burn sequence, and even did the ignition scene on camera. You can even tell me you don't like Kane Hodder's portrayal of Jason. That's fine. If you actually believe that all he does is heavy breathing, A, you need to stop smoking crack, and B, you need to rewatch the movie. The fans who get it, get it. Kane Hodder is an absolute monster as Jason Voorhees. In closing, the bust in this video is a Night Owl Productions Part 7 Jason bust. It's made of latex. These, I believe, are no longer produced, but you can find them secondhand on eBay, as I did with this one. And the hockey mask, again, like my Part 4, was customized by Rick Store on eBay. So I guess that's just about all I have to say about this, and I will catch you guys for the next one.